I don't date gamers. A phrase that I hear from women who probably think that a LAN party is a trendy night out, and who probably assume the word hardcore means being able to watch an entire series of Love Island without blinking. Jokes aside, some women genuinely consider gaming not only a waste of time, but also a sign of immaturity that should be belittled and looked down upon. These particular ladies seem to believe that the only boss you should face is the one in the office, yet believe that spending hours doom scrolling through social media is somehow the more productive option. These women probably think XP is some kind of skincare brand, and for some reason think memorizing every Real Housewives drama arc demonstrates a higher form of intelligence than playing your childish games. In their world, the only loot worth chasing exists in a Black Friday sale at a department store. While most gamers would simply roll their eyes at people with these kinds of out-of-touch opinions, it does beg the question, why is this kind of judgmental, ill-informed attitude so widely accepted as reasonable to hold within mainstream culture? It's almost as if sneering at something you don't understand makes you more sophisticated when, in reality, it just highlights how little effort some are willing to put into expanding their own interests. It's amusing that this is considered normal, yet binge-watching the latest trashy reality show or reading a celebrity gossip magazine is somehow seen as a more enlightened pastime. So what on earth is going on here? I am Lady Decade. Hit that subscribe button as we delve into the utterly ridiculous and completely unhinged prejudice against anyone who dares to play video games. Apparently, enjoying a bit of interactive entertainment turns you into a second-class citizen in the eyes of people whose greatest achievement is scrolling to the end of their Instagram feeds. But worry not, fellow geeks and so-called losers. I'm here to make your life a little bit easier. Sure, gaming can be an expensive and often misunderstood hobby, but I've got your back with massive discounts on top titles that will make your passion feel a little less heavy on the wallet. From Metaphor ReFantazio and Dragon Ball Sparking Zero to Space Marines 2, I can score you up to 90% off of thousands of AAA, indie, retro and modern titles. Just use my affiliate links and not only will you save big, but you'll also be supporting a queen like me. So go ahead, embrace your hobby, grab those deals and happy gaming. People tend to dismiss gaming more than other hobbies, likely because they can't comprehend its value beyond their narrow scope of productive activities. Unlike so-called worthwhile pursuits like learning an instrument or crafting something tangible, gaming is brushed off as passive and pointless. Of course, this perspective conveniently ignores the fact that many of the very same critics waste hours scrolling mindlessly through social media or binge-watching television, yet somehow feel superior. In fact, in certain instances, some women use their social media profiles and online dating accounts to declare often that they don't date gamers. So, what's really happening here? Why do these individuals who spend their downtime equally unproductively think that they're sitting on some higher moral throne? In some circles, watching reality shows and wasting time on social media are somehow deemed more acceptable than gaming, largely because they fit neatly into the boxes of socially accepted laziness. Reality TV, with its mind-numbing dramatics, is seen as a way to unwind and stay up to date with the absurd cultural zeitgeist, as if keeping tabs on manufactured drama makes one more informed or cultured. As for social media, well, that's just glorified procrastination disguised as networking or staying connected, even though most of it boils down to scrolling through endless nonsense. For example, I am a full-time professional YouTuber, and even I've stopped bothering to use Twitter and Facebook, deeming them poor usage of time. After all, being online is my actual job, not a hobby, so I need to use that time more effectively than others. If I, whose livelihood is tied to online presence, can do without it, there's absolutely no way a normie needs it in their life. In most circumstances, when people say they need social media, what they really mean is they need validation, distractions, and a place to inflate their sense of importance. They cling to the illusion that they're being productive or informed when in reality they're just stuck in the same cycle of superficial engagement and digital noise, but with none of the self-awareness to admit it. But gaming, oh no, that's still considered the realm of immature and unproductive, as if it's somehow more self-indulgent than spending hours watching trainwreck reality TV or scrolling through someone else's highlights in their life. It's laughable, really. Both are forms of passive consumption, yet people have convinced themselves that their time-wasting habits are somehow superior because society has given them a stamp of approval. If you sit back and think about it for a moment, it's actually an insane double standard to hold. So, if people believe that their laziness is somehow less lazy than other people's laziness, then why so much hate, particularly on gamers? Gaming is sadly often unfairly saddled with outdated stereotypes. Despite video games being developed for everyone, gamers in legacy media are often still lazily portrayed as socially isolated, immature, or unproductive. Sure, any hobby that someone can do alone might attract a few socially awkward individuals, but let's not ignore the obvious. 99% of people who play video games are perfectly normal, well-adjusted adults with fulfilling lives, plenty of interests, and actual friends. It's almost laughable how some people try to reduce gamers to stereotypes when really they just can't grasp that gaming is one of the many things we enjoy. It's not that complicated. Unfortunately, no matter how much the medium evolves, these tired, uninformed views continue to linger in popular culture, distorting the way people perceive an interest they clearly don't understand. While all this is true, one thing I will add is that moderation is key, like with any activity. Too much of anything, whether it's gaming, exercising, working, or even socializing, can have negative effects. When gaming becomes an obsession and starts to interfere with other aspects of life, it can lead to problems like neglecting responsibilities or isolating oneself. But this isn't a gaming-specific issue, it's about balance. You could say the same about binge-watching TV shows, scrolling endlessly on social media, or even pursuing a passion like painting. After all, not all painters are good people. History has shown us that. The issue arises when something enjoyable tips into excess, and that's a matter of personal responsibility, not the hobby itself. So if we're going to single out any group of individuals for their lifestyle choices, let's at least focus on the right people. Addicts need help, not gamers. In my opinion, we should offer support and assistance to people who are genuinely in need, rather than wasting time stigmatizing harmless entertainment choices. But of course, some bitter people would rather take cheap shots on their dating profiles to feel superior, like these women are doing. It's not only petty, but also counterproductive. Shaming people for what they enjoy doesn't solve any problems. It just highlights ignorance. On top of all this, then there's a historical bias against anything new. Just like people scoffed at TV or rock music when they first became popular, gaming has faced resistance from those too stubborn or out of touch to accept that times change. If it's not a hobby they grew up with, it must not be worth taking seriously, right? In Western civilization, the generation with the highest population is still the baby boomers, the last generation born before gaming came into existence. For many of them, gaming isn't something they understand or connect with. Instead, it's easy for them to discredit it as frivolous or juvenile because it's unfamiliar. They grew up with entirely different forms of entertainment, so their knee-jerk reaction is to dismiss gaming rather than accept it as a legitimate immersive pastime. Combine that with a tendency to romanticize the activities of their youth while condemning the distractions of younger generations, and you get a perfect storm of ignorance and judgment. It's no surprise then that these same people might find it easier to criticize gaming than to learn how it's become such a popular, multifaceted form of art and entertainment. But aside from parroting this particular generation's perspective on things that don't interest them, this doesn't explain why some younger women, and occasionally younger men as well, hold these views too. So, let's address the elephant in the room and address the darker side of so-called gamer culture. The perception of toxicity within the gaming community has contributed to a widespread negative stigma around gamers. One of the primary factors fueling this stigma is the anonymity provided by online spaces. Gamers, often shielded by the lack of personal accountability, may feel emboldened to behave in ways they wouldn't in real-world interactions. This anonymity can lead to rude, offensive, or aggressive behavior in gaming environments, which, when experienced by others, fosters a perception that gaming communities are filled with negativity and hostility. While I believe this to be more than fair criticism of some unscrupulous individuals, we can observe a similar dynamic in comment sections on social media platforms like Facebook and TikTok. Women, unsurprisingly, are no strangers to engaging in rude, offensive, or aggressive behavior online, just like anyone else. The anonymity of platforms like TikTok seems to give them a license to unleash their inner critic. In fact, it's almost laughable how frequently women insult one another in the comments, often over the most trivial things like appearances or lifestyle choices. It's like watching a real-life Mean Girls Club play out, only it's online and much worse. The level of trolling and nastiness on TikTok easily rivals, if not surpasses, anything seen in the gaming world. And let's not kid ourselves, just as many women are in on this toxic behavior as men, even in spaces where gaming isn't even a factor. It's a free-for-all, and no one seems to care about being decent anymore. The absence of face-to-face accountability on these platforms allows for an environment where individuals, regardless of gender, feel freer to engage in arguments, spread negativity, or participate in cyberbullying. This is not a gamer problem, it's a human online problem. I guess we need to ban the internet. But then again, how would people be able to moan about gamers without online dating? Still, it's pretty obvious why this sort of behavior occurs online. Anonymity and distance between users creates a space where people, women included, feel detached from the consequences of their words. This leads to the perpetuation of negative behaviors across various platforms, whether it's in gaming lobbies or social media comment sections. Apart from all of this, we have the additional factor of certain women looking down their noses at gamers simply out of ignorance. People who don't play games often have no idea about the creativity, problem solving, and teamwork involved. Without actually ever trying video games, they dismiss gaming as a waste of time because, as is normal with many humans, why open your mind when you can just lazily stick to assumptions? Speaking of ignorance, everyone knows you can't spell the word without IGN, and back in 2022, the publication uploaded an article titled "Don't Befriend or Date Gamers," says international author. They would report that international author Ali A. Rizvi has launched a broadside against men who actively play video games, saying people should not befriend, date, or have children with them. What a moron. This Canadian secular humanist writer and podcaster, who writes a column for the Huffington Post, promotes a narrative that games give young men the illusion of accomplishment. He adds, "Instead of working out and getting in shape, they choose avatars who are tall, strong, and ripped. Instead of driving awesome cars, beating out their competition, and getting beautiful women in real life, they get to do it all not just on a screen, but in VR, where the illusion feels even more real, despite being utterly non-existent. Instead of actually standing up for themselves and defending their families, they get to fight and defeat fake enemies created by talented animators, without getting so much as a scratch on themselves and no real risk of getting hurt. Video games enable these guys to fake achievement and traditional masculine success because they are too lazy to do it in real life." Oh, where do we even begin with this pitiful excuse for an argument? It's almost adorable how Ali A. Rizvi tries to sound intellectual while completely misunderstanding the complexity of video games and, dare I say, reality in general. He thinks he stumbled onto some profound revelation, like he's peering into the souls of men and revealing the truth of their laziness and lack of ambition. Spoiler alert, he hasn't. First of all, claiming that video games give young men an illusion of accomplishment is laughable. Perhaps Rizvi hasn't heard, but the concept of entertainment doesn't exist solely for him to validate whether it contributes to someone's real-world achievements. People have hobbies, Ali, and sometimes they enjoy things like games. Shocking, I know. Maybe, just maybe, it's not that men playing games are lazy, but rather that they can juggle both enjoying video games and achieving personal goals. Imagine that. Multitasking. Or are you going to try and tell me that only women are capable of that too? And can we take a moment to marvel at the mental gymnastics required for this gem? Instead of working out and getting in shape, they get to choose avatars who are tall, strong, and ripped. Because clearly, anyone who plays video games has given up on ever stepping foot in a gym or taking care of their health, right? Sure. Let's ignore the numerous studies showing how many video games can actually improve cognitive function, problem-solving skills, and even relieve stress. Important aspects of a well-balanced life. But no, let's reduce everything to some outdated trope that only real men lift weights and drive fast cars. Bravo, Ali. You're really breaking new ground here. Oh, and don't even get me started on his pearl clutching over VR. Bless this little man. He really thinks virtual reality is some kind of dangerous trap that keeps men from living out their testosterone-fueled fantasies. Instead of standing up for their families, they're apparently too busy saving virtual worlds. It's almost as if Rizvi believes that men are one-dimensional action heroes who only exist to pump iron, drive a Bugatti, and naturally get beautiful women. It's 2024, Ali. Time to update your software. What's truly sad here is how narrow-minded and insecure this entire argument comes across. Rizvi's idea that men need to adhere to some archaic idea of masculinity, where their worth is measured only by their physical prowess or material success, is not only boring, it's plain wrong. I have read a lot of idiotic takes on this channel, but he might take the cake. Men are allowed to be creative, have a work-life balance, and, gasp, even find time to play video games too. To be fair, this stance, no matter how stupid it might sound, isn't that different from the ones I've heard peddled through certain portions of the so-called Red Pill community. Oh, the Red Pill Anti-Gaming Brigade. What a delightful group of self-proclaimed visionaries. These folks have unlocked the ultimate secret to life, apparently. According to them, video games aren't just harmless fun or a legitimate form of entertainment. No. Games are actually a part of a grand conspiracy to turn men into complacent, unproductive drones. Of course, it's the games that are stopping you from becoming the next multi-millionaire bodybuilder with a perfect relationship, right? Forget that you enjoy gaming or that it can be a healthy escape. These wise sages know better. Gaming is clearly the root of all societal evils, encouraging escapism and laziness because heaven forbid people enjoy a bit of downtime. After all, why focus on hobbies when you could be grinding 24/7 for the perfect vision of masculinity that only exists in their heads? There are clearly complete lunatics out there covering all ends of the political spectrum and, occasionally, raw dogging 8-hour flights. Now, let's address the obvious: moderation. The absurdity here is that the idea that video games are uniquely dangerous, as though no other hobby could ever be overindulged. People can binge watch TV, endlessly scroll social media, or become obsessed with the gym, but nobody's launching a crusade against those activities. It's the imbalance that's the problem, not the activity itself. Life is about finding balance, and that includes gaming. If you can handle your responsibilities and enjoy a few hours playing FIFA or Fortnite, what's the issue? Gaming, like anything else, is fine, as long as it's done in moderation. The real waste of time? Pretending that video games are the downfall of civilization when the real challenge is learning to manage your time wisely. That is what all of this boils down to. Or is it? From my observations, there is one further reason why some women do not want to date gamers. Oh, well, it appears that some women out there have convinced themselves that in order to date a man, they need to share all of his interests, almost as if their partner's hobbies should revolve entirely around them. It's quite amusing, really. Some seem to think that just because gaming can be a time-consuming hobby, that you should never entertain the thought of dating gamers. They fear that a man who games won't devote every waking second to them or the relationship. Of course, this all circles back to my point about moderation, something though, if I am honest, it doesn't feel like these women would be happy with any. When it comes to relationships, some of these women seem so self-absorbed that the mere idea of moderation is utterly lost on them. They're so egomaniacal that they expect everything that their partner does is to serve their interests somehow exclusively. It's as if their partner's existence should revolve around fulfilling their every whim with no room for individual hobbies or personal time, unless they too benefit from it in some way. Watching television, for example, is perfectly acceptable as long as they can cuddle up on the couch and have their presence validated, of course. Going to the gym, well, that's beneficial too, as it results in a more chiseled, aesthetically pleasing spouse. And let's not forget about spending endless hours at work. That's totally fine, provided the paycheck is spent on buying them nice things. It's all about what serves them, after all. Gaming, on the other hand, doesn't quite fit into these women's carefully curated list of acceptable activities. Why? Well, it doesn't serve them directly, does it? There's no opportunity for them to center themselves in the experience, no cuddling on the couch, no immediate physical benefits, and certainly no extra cash flowing in to finance their whims. Gaming is a hobby that allows their partner to focus on something other than them, which, in their minds, makes it a threat rather than a valid pastime. It's not about the activity itself, it's about their inability to control and benefit from it. And that is the primary reason why these TikTok addicts despise men who game. Don't forget, for those of you out there who couldn't care less about these shallow bitches, you can snag up to 90% off of thousands of different games using my link in the pinned comment. And if you want to support what I do in a more personal level, you can always check out my cosplay library and more by joining me over on Patreon. I'm looking forward to chatting with you more over there soon.